Hi guys, today we are going to look at the rental issues in UK. What are the rents in UK now? Why are the rents getting so expensive? And what's the impact on people's life? Are there any policies to address these issues? Today we are going to analyze this issue together. Okay, so let's first look at what's happening in UK. This graph shows the price index of private rent for the past 10 years. You can see that there's a steeper increase after the pandemic. According to Zooplus analysis, the average cost of a new let has risen by 27% over the last 3 years. Beside of the rising rent, people are spending more and more of their income on rent. From the graph on the right, you can see that without housing support, households in private sectors are spending nearly 40% of their income on rent. The unaffordable rents are pushing people to the margins. Some low-income people are forced to move to the suburbs, which increase their commuting cost. Meanwhile, they are facing problems of overcrowding, poor condition housing, and landlord exploitation. The rising rent and moving out increased tenant instability and insecurity. According to an article of Guardian in February, nearly 1 million children in the UK are at the risk of falling into poverty or will face the financial hardship as a result of rising rent. All this lead to further inequality in education, health, and employment opportunities. So, why are there so many people in the private rental sector? To answer this, we need to look back to 1980s. During that time, Thatcher's government introduced the right to buy. This allowed people to buy council houses, which is a form of British public housing built by the local authorities. Since then, large number of social housing were sold. While this expanded the home ownership at that time, it is also accompanied with the decrease of social housing stock and the expansion of private rental market. This process marked a turning point. Housing was no longer primarily seen as a social good managed by the state, but a private asset for individual accumulation. Over time, more homes ended up in the hands of private landlords or became a part of investment, which deepened the financialization of housing. In recent years, government relies on local housing allowance, also known as LHA, to compensate for market failure. But this instead pushed up rents and failed to provide enough public housing for the past few years. Recent data shows that almost 1.3 million households in England are on the waiting list for social housing. Facing this situation, you may want to know what has the government done? Well, in 2023, UK government enacted the Renters Reform Bill, forbidding no-fault eviction. After Labour came to power last year, they had committed more investment in social housing and provide stronger tenant protections. Will these measures work? I'm sure they will to some extent, but what's the real problem behind? Instead of just anchoring the symptoms, the core problem is that housing is now treated as an investment asset, not a place to live or a necessity of people's life. This financialized view of housing has led to a series of consequences, like the rent increases faster than income growth, the lack of security and housing stability, increased income inequality, and spatial separation. So, what can we do? Are current solutions enough to protect tenants and bring affordability back? We will discuss this in the following part.
Is rent control a viable solution to this problem? Let's start by discussing ways to control rents. First, rent control refers to a government-imposed regulation that limits the amount landlords can charge for leasing residential properties. Policies vary but often include price ceilings, capping rents at a specific level or restricting annual increases, vacancy control, maintaining rent caps even when tenants change. Second, rental bidding restrictions. There are some policies to limit competitive bidding for rental properties, where landlords encourage prospective tenants to offer higher rents than the advertised price. Such restrictions aim to ensure transparency in pricing and prevent the artificial inflation of rent through tenant competition. However, there are some potential problems with rent control policies. For example, reduced rental supply. Rental control policies compress profit margins, discouraging landlords from maintaining or expanding rental portfolios. Landlords may convert units to condos or shift to short-term rentals to bypass long-term rent caps. Also, there are some policy loopholes. First, shadow fees, charging non-rent service fee like furniture rental to avoid rental ceilings. Second, studio renovation costs justifying rent hikes by claiming upgrades that minimally improve quality. Third, short-term contracts, using fixed-term lease to reset rents to market rates frequently, bypassing fixing control rules. Next, let's talk about the case of Scotland. Concerns about the levels of rental growth, which is partly contributing to a cost of living crisis, moved the Scottish government to implement rent freeze policy on October 28, 2022. This has a temporary power to cap rents within tenancies. However, the policy faced widespread criticism. This criticism increased three main points: reduced housing supply, diminished investment appeal, persistent rental inflation, and as a result, rent freeze policy was lifted for the social rental market on April 1, 2023. Therefore, without accompanying regulation and the supply-side measures, rent freeze policy risks supply-demand imbalances, ultimately driving rents higher instead of containing them.
Solution 2. Build more houses, but it's not that easy. Now, the government had a plan, build 300,000 homes a year. In 2023, they managed 235,000. Not bad, unless you are one of the 65,000 people still queuing for a flat. But it's not just about effort. They are real hurdles. Construction costs are soaring. If scammers' price go any higher, we might start using Lego. The industry actually shrunk by 1.4% in April 2024. So even the builders are packing up, with public debt near 98% of GDP. Government spending are higher than London studio flat. Planning delays and underfunded local councils don't help either. It's like trying to build a house with no bricks and a 3-year permit wait. Let's move on social housing. The kind of housing that means to be affordable, secure, and ideally within 2 bus rides of your job. Here's the problem. High-paid jobs are clustered in places like central London and Manchester. But affordable housing is way out of in suburbs. Sometimes it feels like a long-distance relationship. The results, long commutes, rising costs, lower quality of life. Worst of all, this leads to lock-in efforts. Families cannot move closer to work and opportunity. It's like Monopoly, but you are stuck on the old Kent Road forever. And this is called a special mismatch. Oh no, that's not a dating app. It means job and homes are in wrong places. But all is not lost. We've got 4 key ideas to starting fix things. Think of them as a housing rescue team. National affordable housing minimum requires 13% of new developments to be affordable. Developers might grumble, but the rest of us will cheer. First, refusal rights for local council give councils the rights to buy rental homes before investors snatch them up. Sports co-ops and housing associations provide long-term financing for the people who build not for profit, but for community. Flexible zoning pilots try losing strict zoning rules in high-demand areas, but why not turn that car park into homes? Now, these policies are not just a random list. They work together. Picture it. More social housing increases by affordable housing targets, set clear goals. Public-private partnerships unlock funding and expertising. And zone reform, that's the key. Without it, all the ambition in the world stuck behind a no development sign. This is about building an ecosystem where each policy spots the other like well-behaved British queen. To warm things up, here's the big picture. We envision a housing system that increases fair and efficient, where everyone, no matter in their own income, has a place choose to call home. Because at the end of the day, housing is not just brick and mortar, it's stability, opportunity, and let's to be honest, a place where you can finally get fiber broadband.
Okay, here comes our social barriers and policy response. The main key barriers is that the political cycles are short in the UK, but housing is a long-term project. So that government relies heavily on local housing allowance, which also known as LHA. LHA may discourage long-term investment in public housing. Another barrier is called NIMSM. What is NIMSM? It's not in my backyard. While people may support affordable housing in theory, many oppose it being built near them. NIMSM, especially in wealthy areas, might block local development and worsen inequality. That's why we propose our policy framework.
Our first principle is that we treat housing as a social right, not a commodity. In the short term, we should protect tenants from eviction and provide income-based housing support. We should also regulate rent increases. In the midterm, we should invest in public housing and simplify approval processes. In the long term, we should reform fiscal and taxation systems and enable stronger central-local policy coordination. In the end, our key question is still what kind of society do we want to build? The goal is not just to control rent, but to ensure affordable, stable, and happy living. Housing should be a foundation for equality, and it must be a right, not an investment product. Thank you.